In this lesson, you'll learn about using Data Loader to insert recurring events. Salesforce upgraded their event recurrence functionality a while ago to support enabling new features in Lightning. To do this, they created some new fields on the event object and named the upgraded features as event series. The fields and functionality in Classic are still referred to as recurring events. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to keep calling it recurring events for this lesson, but we are focusing on inserting data into the Lightning-based event series functionality. The first item of importance is that when Salesforce upgraded to the event series functionality, they decided to use the very unique and not at all confusing naming convention of recurrence to. So when inserting anything to do with a recurrence, you can ignore the recurrence fields and focus instead on the recurrence to fields. Note also that Lightning's event series doesn't have a series parent identifier, which does affect our migration strategy. An event series is created in the UI by clicking the repeat checkbox on the event record. A beautiful, easy-to-use section opens up which allows you to set the applicable series information, which then hits some intense logic on the back end to populate the recurrence fields by way of using reference rules, or R rules for short. R rules are the recurrence patterns that make the recurrence functionality work. Let's create an event series manually in the UI and then export those event records to see what Salesforce populated. This event series will take place on the 31st of each month for 12 months starting on 12/31/25. Now we've exported the event records using Data Loader. Let's take a look at how Salesforce calculated the R rules based on our UI input. Is recurrence to is true for all 12 of the events. The recurrence to pattern start date is the date of the first event on all records. The recurrence to pattern text contains the applicable R rule, and the start date time of each event in the series is based on the rule logic, which we had set to the 31st of each month. But what happens when the month doesn't have a 31st day? Let's take a look at April. Luckily, Salesforce is smart enough to know that there's not an April 31st, so it schedules the event for the 30th. Let's talk about how we're going to transform our data to support inserting event series. When you're tasked with migrating data from an outside database and its event data doesn't easily conform to Salesforce's backend requirements, you have a few options. Number one, provide the client with an Excel template and let them fill it in with applicable field data. This is not an easy thing for anyone to do, so the likelihood of the client actually creating a sheet of new series data for import is pretty unlikely, which is where option two comes in. Teach their users, either directly or via Train the Trainer, how to create their own new event series in the UI. You then will migrate their event data without any series functionality, but all of the historical and future events will be created as part of the migration. Option three is to increase the scope of work to accommodate the additional hours required to create, transform, test, and insert new event series data. Make sure you feel comfortable with the amount of hours that you ask for this effort. In a Salesforce migration, migrating event series logic is more straightforward, but still requires some transformation work. If we simply migrate the source data into the target org as is, meaning we include the recurrence logic on each record, then a new series is created from each source system event. If you're wondering what I mean by that, let me show you. This source data contains 5 event records that are part of a 5-day event series. Notice that column AF contains the R rule for the 5-day series. Column AG contains the activity date of each event in the series. If we don't wipe out the recurrence to data on any of these records before migrating, we end up telling Salesforce we want each of the 5 events to create its own new 5-day series, resulting in 25 new event records. This color-coded spreadsheet is an export of these new events. In red, we see the event series created based on the source data's first event. Dark blue displays the second new series based on the source data's second event. In pink is a third series based on day 3 of the source data series, and so on. How do we prevent this from occurring? We have to identify one event within each event series to behave as a new series parent, because Lightning's event series functionality doesn't include a recurrence activity ID that tells us which record that could be. We'll flag one event from each series in the source data. This will include recurrence logic that Salesforce will see on insert and create new event series. We'll also determine which events in the data should be inserted as part of history and which data should not be migrated, such as future dated series events, which if created would be confusing standalone future events not connected to any series. The first step in our data prep is to agree on an as of date with the client so we know what to consider future versus past events. Typically, this is the same as the migration's go live date. The new series starter event will be the event scheduled on or the first in line after the as of date. In this example, the event scheduled on 12/30/25 will be our new series starter event. So we'll flag this and retain its recurrence data during the migration. Series events prior to the as of date will be inserted as a non-series historical event. And most importantly, we want to filter out and not migrate any events after the new series starter in a series. And since there's no way we're going to spend time doing manual analysis, we'll use 2 Excel formulas to do the heavy lifting for us. Formula 1 is a helper formula that creates a key for identifying which records are part of a series. The second formula will return migration instructions for each record in the file. The formulas are referring to columns in Excel, and I've provided a key in the workbook. I created these formulas based on the real-world scenario of running a data export from setup from the source org, and then realizing that the recurrence 2 fields are not included in it. So I ran an event object export using data loader and selected all fields. It's possible that your column order may be slightly different if you have custom fields. Side note, I understand that there are better ways to analyze data and generate the kind of output we want, but this course is designed to accommodate novice Excel users, and I don't find value in overcomplicating when 2 basic formulas will do the trick. This is Formula 1, which we'll name Series Key. It identifies which event records are part of a series together. It creates a unique identifier for each event series in the dataset based on matching recurrent start date, patterns, and related who or what IDs. Formula 2 contains the migration instructions. First, it looks for all the non-recurring events and returns instructions to include a non-series event insert. Then it analyzes each series group based on the Formula 1 key and compares each event's activity date to the cutoff date. If it's before that date, output the instructions to include a non-series event insert. Then it analyzes each series group based on the Formula 1 key and compares the event's activity date to the cutoff date. Anything before that date will get loaded as part of the history. Then it uses Excel's else logic to identify the next future event in the series and outputs the text new series starter. And finally, it looks for all future events scheduled after the new series starter and outputs do not migrate this future series event. Let's pop over to our workbook and go through this step by step. We are in the Recurring Event Workbook on the DL Event Export tab. What the data in this tab represents is going into Data Loader, choosing the event object, doing an export, and including all of the fields in that export. This is the order that my organization's fields came out in, but yours could be different, depending on if your org would spit out a currency ISO code, also depending on what kind of custom fields you have on the activity object. That will impact the order of the fields that your data comes out in. The formulas I've included to help identify what to do with each of these records in a recurrence are based on where my fields are located. If the isRecurrence2 field that is referenced in this formula is located in column U for my data and in column S in your data, then we need to make sure that the formula is updated to reference S instead of U. You can do this manually, and I've included some helpful instructions here, but I do think it will most likely be easier for you to use ChatGPT for this. So click on the tab called GPT Key and Prompt. At the top is a prompt, and then down below in yellow is what you need to update based on your data. You'll start by entering your project's as of date. You'll then write in the letter of the column where each of these fields is located. Don't forget to enter where you're going to enter the series key Formula 1 because it is referenced by Formula 2. For example, in your data, if we go all the way to the right, let's say that we are going to enter in the series key data in column AZ. In our GPT key, we need to make sure that we tell ChatGPT that we are putting Formula 1 into AZ so that when it spits out the updated Formula 2, it references the right column number. For our simulation, I have updated everything in yellow based on the Your Data tab in our workbook. So let's copy all of these cells, and then we'll head over to ChatGPT, paste it in, and hit go. Now that ChatGPT has given us the updated formulas, what you do is copy everything starting at the equal sign in order to make the formula live in Excel. So we'll take Formula 1, head back over, and for our simulation, we're going to use the Your Data tab and paste in our formula into the series key field. And then we can double click that to send it down into the whole column. If we scroll down a bit, we can see that the key is creating as we expected. Now we'll head back over to GPT and we will grab our Formula 2, starting with the equal sign, copy, and then we'll paste this into the migration instructions column. And then we will double click in this this column to send it down. Notice that when we enter in these two new columns, they don't have the filtering functionality on them. So we do want to make sure that we apply that to the whole workbook so that when we check our work, we're not throwing off the ordering. We can set these by clicking copy and then paste special and then values if we want to get rid of the formulas. But let's take a look at this and see if it worked the way we expected it to. Easiest way to do that is start by clicking on is recurrence false, meaning we want to see all of the records that are not recurrences and make sure that all of them have migration instructions of include a non-series event insert. And that looks good. Let's go back to is recurrence 2 and mark it as true, and then we'll get rid of all the false. And then what I do to try and sort these more logically is to do ascending by ID. Normally when event series are created, they're being created at the same time, so those events are all created in a row. Let's scroll over and take a look at the far right at what our migration instructions look like. Let's take a look at this series called Weekly Tuesday Event Series. We know that this is part of a series because it has the exact same key. Now what we are going to look at to check our work is which of these records is returned as the new series starter. So if we were to scroll back and take a look to our activity date, remember that our as of date is 1/16 and we wanted the event scheduled closest to that date but not before. So the activity scheduled for 1/20 would be the next event in the series that will then behave as our new event series starter. The 3 records in the series prior to that will be included in our non-series event insert, and we will not migrate anything that is scheduled after our new series starter because it'll be created automatically when we load the new series starter event into Salesforce. Now that we feel confident our formulas have identified which records to include in our event insert and which ones not to, just remember that if you're including a series event record as a non-series event, make sure that you wipe out any series information such as our rule and start date. Now you're ready to prep and insert your events. If you need to, you can refer back to the event lesson before you do your testing. Now it's your turn. Open up the Recurring Events Workbook and take a look at the different tabs. Get familiar with the formulas, take a look at the ChatGPT prompt, do a test of inserting an historical event series to make sure that you really understand what's going on with the data. Up next, you will learn about recurring tasks.